What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to talk about the best tools for doing upgrades on your guitar. So on Dylan Talk to Tone right now, we have a bunch of upgrade videos going, right? We're doing that acrylic Strat that I got off of eBay with the LEDs in it. We're doing the Great Guitar Build-Off guitar, which you haven't seen a lot on lately, but I'm working on some stuff and trying to get some stuff together for it. That's going to be a wacky build. You know, we're doing the Telly. We did the Telly stuff last week. We've got some Strat stuff coming up, and we've been doing everything from basic setup stuff all the way to fretwork, making pickups. Over on our Patreon workshop last month, we really dove into pickups. So what I want to talk about today is kind of the best tools for upgrading your guitar. What we're going to do, because people have been asking about this, like, how do you know which ones are good? You've tried a bunch of different stuff, etc. Because you can buy all kinds of junk on eBay and Amazon and like live to regret it, right? Because some of the stuff is terrible, some of the stuff is awesome. So while there are millions of different options for doing stuff, I'm going to show you what I use every day. Like, this is what I do and this is what I use every day. And I'll tell you, when I replace a tool often because I wear it out, or if something's lasted a long time, that kind of stuff, and if it really works. So what we're going to do though is we're going to put it in levels. So I've got this picnic table all set up, and what we're gonna do is, this is like level 1, just like basic working on your guitar, changing strings, basic setup stuff. Then this is kind of next level stuff when you're gonna get into changing pots and maybe doing pickup swaps and like that kind of stuff. And then over here we've got like making nuts and fretwork material, and then on the far end of the table over there is making your own pickups, like winding your own pickups and stuff. So we'll just do this in levels. So let's get started with level 1. Okay, so basic guitar setup stuff. There's just some basic tools you need. I'm gonna start out with kind of my favorite, and I've said this before, they are not sponsored. This is not a sponsored video or anything. I just really like this stuff. This is a Cruise Tools toolkit. It's got a bunch of stuff in here. It's got all your basic like bits and Allen keys and stuff like that, but it also comes with your feeler gauge. It comes with a measuring stick for your string height thing. Comes with a work capo for like checking your setup, and a bunch of other stuff. I just really like it. Comes with a string winder. I took my string winder out, it's over here. It fits in your guitar case and you can take it with you wherever you want. It's got basically everything you need in there, and yes, you can go to Harbor Freight or you can go somewhere and assemble all these tools, but honestly, for the quality of these tools and the ease of it, I think it's only like 40 bucks or something. You will not be able to do that at Harbor Freight and have the same quality. Here's the problem with buying cheap tools. You'll end up rounding off Allen bolts and stuff like that, like in your Floyd Rose or various other tremolo work or anything like that. Cheap tools ruin stuff, and so I just don't use cheap. It's just, you don't need to go buy Snap-on and all really expensive stuff, but just don't buy really cheap stuff, because if you're gonna do this and have tools that last you a long time and don't do damage to your guitar, you'll avoid that. This is the little Hercules neck rest that I use. I like it because it's adjustable, and mostly I like it because it folds up. In my life, everything's got to be super compact, so I really like the little foldy Hercules thing. I think it's awesome. Cleaning stuff, fretboard oil by Lizard Spit. They've got some new stuff out that you're going to see in a video coming up that I'm going to share with you pretty soon. They got some new stuff that's pretty awesome. Lizard Spit guitar polish. I don't use anything. I don't use furniture polish. I don't use any silicone based stuff. This is Carnauba wax. It's awesome. I love it. I know that when you go on Amazon, because there's going to be Amazon links to all this stuff, so please use those links. That helps out the channel a little bit. Doesn't cost you anything. Okay, so whatever this thing costs, it lasts forever. I mean, like a couple years. The downside, like, I've been using this same little bottle of fretboard oil for probably a year, and I do stuff more than the average person. So, FYI. All right, the other thing is tuners. Have a good tuner. Now, I'm a Korg fan. I like Korg. This is the Pitch Clip 2, which I really like. This is the Sledgehammer. This is one of my favorite tuners ever because it has a strobe simulator in it. So if you cannot afford a very expensive strobe tuner, this is, to me, in a clip version, a very accurate next best thing. If you can't afford like a Peterson strobe, those are hundreds of dollars. This is fantastic. A step up from this would be Korg's, what is this thing called? The Pitch Black Portable. This also has a strobe simulator in it, and I really, really, really like these two tuners. They are not expensive on the grand scheme of really good tuners, and I think they really work. You can set up you can do intonation. They are accurate enough to do intonation. If you just try to use a snark or something to do intonation setup, it won't be accurate enough. These two, really, really awesome. So this is my setup right here. A couple of good tuners, an all-in-one kit, and one of these. Now, you could also get a mat, like a work mat, that I would definitely recommend that. Personally, I just use a blanket from off the back of the couch. Leslie the other day was like, when did we graduate from a crappy towel to the blanket off the back of the couch? And I'm like, I promise I'm not doing anything dirty on it. So, you know, be respectful of your household, but just use a blanket on a table. Saves you 15 bucks. Okay, let's go from basic maintenance to, let's do some basic modding. How about that? Okay, so let's talk basic modding on your guitar. Now, this thing is a little bit in the way, so we'll move it out of the way. But basically, I just have, this is a tool caddy, actually, that a viewer in Florida made me and sent it to me. So thank you so much for doing that, sir. And I just have some basic stuff in here. I just have some less compact things. I have a driver with a 1/2-inch socket on it for tightening up tuner keys. I have an X-Acto knife. I have a little file in here. I have a couple of flat screwdrivers. These screwdrivers look stupid, but I have them, they're like ground down to certain dimensions. Actually, this is ground down to set a pilot screw on a dirt bike on an old key and slide carburetor. Anyway, former life. This is one of my little multi-strippers. I just got some basic stuff in here. So anyway, this is, I just wanted to share that. I think it's kind of cool. That isn't really super relevant to the modding side of everything. A good driver makes a lot of things faster. I use the DeWalt one. I like it because it's compact. I like it because it is very controllable. People will say, why do you use power tools on your guitar? I use them to disassemble a lot, and then if you've seen me in videos lately, I actually will assemble down to almost tight, and then I will go back with a hand screwdriver and tighten. If I were to use all hand everything, I would never get anything done. So we gotta have some power tools. The other thing that is a must-have is a good soldering iron. Now here's the thing about soldering irons. We're talking about like changing pots and switches and swapping out your output jack, stuff like that. A lot of people have a really hard time with soldering, and they're kind of scared of it. The problem is because they're probably not using enough heat and they're using a crappy soldering iron, okay? That's probably the #1 thing, in my opinion. This is a $40 soldering iron at the time of making this video. I'll put a link to it in the description. This is the one I use every day, making pickups, doing installs. I did it because we have a how to solder class on Skillshare. There's a link to it in the description below. It's really good. If you are a Skillshare member, you can go check it out for free. If you're not a Skillshare member, you can still go check it out for free because there's like an entry, whatever, free couple months or whatever. Just go click the link and see what it is. This is awesome. I put it on 3.5, solder everything every day, from pickup covers to pickup wires to everything. I got the little brass thing stuffed in here. I took it out of the little gold thing and stuffed it in here to clean my tips with. I've been using it for about 2 years. I've worn out a couple of tips along the way, and I solder every day. I know it's not industrial strength, it's really only hobby grade, but I solder with this thing every day, and it is amazing for $40. You gotta have a good soldering iron. If you don't, you're gonna hate your life trying to do modifications. Now, wire stripper. So everybody knows that Doc in all of our live streams gives me a hard time about using my teeth, and I actually have a chipped tooth from a motorcycle accident. I have a chipped tooth from 3rd grade smear. I have some chipped teeth. So, and I actually have a chipped tooth from stripping wires. So Leslie calls this the dinosaur stripper. You put the wire in there, you go like this, and it's awesome. It works all the way down to like your 24 gauge wire, that's real thin stuff. I really, really like it, and I use that as well. Okay, the other main thing for doing mod stuff is you gotta have a good meter. Again, I do this every day, and I know this meter is a little bit more expensive than a lot of people want to spend money on, but a Fluke 115, it's true RMS, it's got all the things, except it doesn't have inductance, so we'll get to that in a minute. I really, really like this meter. Again, you can see it's beat up. I use it every day. It's my main meter. Now, I did buy another one. This is the Proster, and I'll leave a link to this below. This is just a cheap Amazon meter. It has capacitance, resistance, and inductance on it, which is really fun because you can really get a good picture. And we've got a couple videos on this, a really good picture of what pickups are going to sound like and the differences between pickups when you start to look at capacitance and inductance as well as resistance. People have criticized my choice of this meter because it is cheap, the frequency that it tests at and stuff. But here's the thing, when you are testing for yourself and you're looking at this versus this, as long as it's consistent looking at this versus this, it's okay. Is it good for industry standard? Maybe not. But for a hobbyist at home doing the work, this is really cool. If you want to dive into how to do troubleshooting actually on a guitar, please put it in the comments below and we will do that. We will talk about how to troubleshoot various problems and how to use this meter to do this, diving into each component on the guitar. If you want, put it in the comments below. Soldering iron, meter, wire strippers, basic tools, all of that stuff. The cool part is, as we go this way and we get more involved, you need all the things here, but you're just kind of adding to the list. So let's get into fretwork and really dive into some gnarly guitar setup stuff. Okay, so as we slide down, now we're getting into some more specific setup stuff. Some of this is just cheap off of Amazon, some of it is not. So we'll just kind of get into that a little bit. All of it is available on Amazon though, actually. So when we're getting into the gnarlier side of setup stuff, we're talking about fretwork, we're talking about making nuts, we're talking about doing, maintenance on nuts, stuff like that. So let's get from basic to hardest. So this is just a cheap set of files. I like to have a little set of files. It's got a 3-angle file in there that I use for doing fret ends. It's got some other shapes in there and stuff. Just little files are super handy for lots of stuff when we start to get into nut shaping, when we start to get into dressing the ends of frets, like that sort of thing. Super helpful. The other thing that I find super helpful, and actually I would argue that even on a basic guitar setup, all the way down at that end of the table, a kind of honorable mention but a little bit more expensive purchase might be a set of nut files. So even if you're just still down there in the basic modification portion of the table, you know what I mean? A basic set of nut files, if you can afford it, is really, really good to have. Because even on a brand new guitar, when you buy a brand new guitar and do kind of a level 2 setup on it, a set of nut files is very, very handy to have. When we're in this portion of the table, when we're talking about now we're down to doing fretwork, we're down to installing our own nuts, we're down to, that sort of stuff, these are a must. A must have. I'll put a link to these in the description. You can see I broke one there. I've had these for about 2, 3, 4, almost 5 years actually. They're just about getting worn out now, but you got to remember about any of this stuff. I do this every day. I do a nut probably every 2 weeks. You as a hobbyist, are you going to do a nut every 2 weeks? You might do 2 or 3 a year. You know what I mean? So these will last you a really, really, really long time. I've also used them on all kinds of materials, probably that I shouldn't have, brass and other things. So you know what I mean? So I try things that the normal person doesn't try, so I probably abuse my tools a little bit more than the average person would, you know what I mean? So These things will last you a long time. They're not 100% cheap, but they're not super expensive, and to me they're worth having. And if you have multiple guitars that you're doing setups on, these tools are worth it. Okay, and then also just a basic flat file. I use a basic flat file for shaping the bottoms of nuts. I just like to have a flat surface that I can file on. It works really well. You can also stick sandpaper to a flat surface, but because I'm on the move and like I'm always in a different place, I don't know that I'm gonna have a perfect flat surface for that, and I don't want to carry something around, so I use this flat file for like shaping the bottom of the nut or the front or the back of the nut, something like that. This has been really good, and this is just a cheap one I got off of Amazon. I'll leave a link to this, obviously, all of this stuff, and I wear these out, you know, and I buy a new $8.99 or whatever. I buy a new one every year, maybe. Fret rocker, straight edge. Leveling beam. I use a compact leveling beam. I do not use a radius leveling beam because I feel that it's not always necessary because you're just doing little spot checks sometimes. So this little compact leveling beam is fantastic. I love it. As long as it has got a nice flat side to it that is machined flat, you could use any piece of box aluminum or whatever from anywhere, but just make sure that it's super flat. I'll leave a link to this one. I got it on Amazon. I love it. When it comes to fret rockers, don't get this little stamped steel cheap one. I got a stamped steel cheap one, and the edges of it were so rough that I didn't feel like I was getting accurate rockers from it. You know what I mean? Like, it just wasn't right. So I got an aluminum one, and then I actually went a little further, and I used my straight edge, and I just made sure that this was super machined. So you could buy a cheaper aluminum one and then just put it on a flat surface and make sure that it's 100% flat. You could go ahead and spend more money and get like a properly good machined one, but they're way more expensive. So if you're trying to save some money, that's a good way to do it. It works awesome. This is a straight edge. Now, this works good. This is a good straight edge. This is a steel straight edge. You gotta be careful with these on Amazon because some of them aren't 100% straight. Just check that. I will leave a link to this one. The one I got is really good. I'm not saying, I don't know what quality control is like. All I know is this one is really good and it works well. I'll leave a link to it. Last thing on fret stuff for now, the Z file. I know the Z file is expensive, but it's only one fret file that you have to have for all size frets. It makes your fret work so much faster, so much easier, and I absolutely love it. This thing is freaking fantastic. And I can do a fret job in a third of the time with it. So if you have more than one guitar, or if you are even thinking about doing this as a hobby, this is probably the one and most expensive tool of all of this stuff, except for maybe the fluke meter. I would own this. This thing is so good. I'll leave a link to it in the description. It is the thing to have. Basic setup, we've got parts install, we've got fretwork. Now let's talk about actually making pickups. I know that this end of the table is probably not something that most people are going to venture into, but it's probably the fun part. So let's do it. Okay, so pickup winding. I know this is an area where a lot of people aren't going to venture into. Obviously, this is my thing, so we're going to talk about it. I would say that once you got this far down the table, you're like all in, right? You need all of those things to get here. The cool part is if you have all of that stuff, you're only adding a couple of components, and only one of those components is actually really expensive. Now, we're gonna do a full review on this, and this is a completely different thing than you've probably seen in my videos before, but I literally just bought last week. I've only wound probably 20 pickups on it so far. This is the Mojo Tone pickup winder. However, even as a hobbyist, if you are going to get into pickup winding, it is worth the money. And I'll tell you why. If you try to make your own out of a sewing machine like I did, that's how I started. If you're trying to cheap out on this, your experience and your ability to make a good pickup early on in your pickup making exploits will be greatly hindered, man. And you'll be like, this sucks, I never even want to try this. This thing makes life so easy. Now, I've been doing this a long time, and I do this every day. It is not cheap. When I started, the first few pickups I wound on it, I was like, oh my gosh, this has made my life so much easier. And I've you know, a few million wines under my belt, and I still just was like, oh man, this thing is worth it. So you gotta have a pickup winder. You could build your own, you could get those plans off of random places on the internet, or you could just buy this, okay? I'm not sponsored. This has nothing to do with it. I'm just telling you, it's worth it. One of the other pickup, how do you want to say, specific things that you don't need on that end of the table, but you do need here, is this is a Tesla meter for measuring the strength of magnetic fields when you charge pickups. When you charge magnets. This is also not as cheap of a tool as a $35 multimeter, but you know, you gotta have it. This little rig I built up, this is just some really strong magnets, rare earth magnets, and a little vise for magnetizing magnets. And people will say, how can you accurate? How's that accurate? Well, because you have the tool to measure, to make sure that you're accurate, to make sure that you're consistent. And again, after doing it a few thousand times, or you know, every day, you get good at it. So a basic setup can work. The other thing that I really use just about every day is this little 2-ton press. Got some tape in here so I don't do damage to stuff. I've been using this thing for a long time. Never wears out, obviously. And then the only other thing that is not pictured on the table, because it's actually plugged in over there heating up for some work that I'm doing today, is a small crock pot for wax potting. And then you just go to Hobby Lobby or wherever and you get some wax and you stick it in there. With this picnic table worth of stuff, now there's more things, there's more little random junk, but these basic things could get you going. So, you know, as I mentioned, a lot of this stuff is some of it's optional, some of it's not. You know, when you're trying to do things, obviously you need a pickup winder if you're going to do pickup stuff. And hopefully this was a comprehensive enough breakdown to go from kind of basic to more involved, to more involved, to more involved. And I think there's a couple takeaways I would give you from this. One is, don't cheap out on tools, especially the ones that you're going to use for the entirety of your hobby. You know what I mean? Those basic hand tools for adjusting various things, like your truss rod and stuff, you're going to want those to last for years, because, and you're also going to want them to not do damage to your truss rod, or to your Floyd Rose bolt, or to whatever, right? Good quality things. And you'll also find along the way that you'll have little special use, like I have a special screwdriver that I use for pickup Philister screws, the screws on a humbucker. I have a special screwdriver that I use for putting in pickguard screws. You know, like the perfect little size. Like I have those things. You'll figure that out over time. So, you know, don't be afraid to experiment and veer off from this basic list. The other thing too is don't be afraid to go further down the picnic table. Don't be afraid to do it. You know, a lot of people are scared to solder, for example. We have that soldering class. It's awesome. A lot of people are scared to do their own fretwork. You could go on Craigslist and get a guitar for $20 and practice with those tools on some junk guitar, or go find one in a dumpster somewhere. Just start doing the stuff. If you want to dive into any of the things that you can accomplish, you know, like we're talking about troubleshooting electronics, like that sort of thing, please put it in the comments, because I'd love to make that video. We probably will make that video. Any of that stuff. My encouragement to you, and of course, obviously on this channel, this is what I try to do 99% of the time, is just get into this part of the hobby. It's less about like what makes better tone, in my opinion, and more about how to learn what makes your tone better yourself. And having a firm grasp of all of this helps you to do that. So thanks for hanging out. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button, because we have these series that are going and they're awesome. And also check out our Patreon. Please hit the little join button down there if you want to see this stuff earlier, because everybody else on YouTube's been watching this, or you know, the members and the patron members and stuff have been watching this online for a week. So definitely check it out. And yeah, man, thanks for hanging out. I guess we will see you Thursday at our live, and then Friday on our vlog. We'll see you soon.